Like and subscribe if these words find you in the quiet hours when the veil between waking and dreaming grows thin. Tonight, we unlock a door that has been waiting for you, though you may not remember placing your hand upon its brass handle. The question we pose is simple in its asking, infinite in its implications. Who guards Lovecraft's forbidden texts? This is no casual inquiry, but a solemn promise that the truths we uncover will shift the ground beneath your feet. In the first 45 seconds, understand this. Knowledge, particularly this kind of knowledge, comes with an inescapable cost. You know the names already, though you may have dismissed them as fiction. The Necronomicon, the Pennacotic manuscripts, the Book of Ibon, Cult de Ghoul. These are not merely literary devices scattered across pulp magazines and scholarly footnotes. They are keys to gates that swing both ways, inward toward madness, outward toward truth. And if such keys exist, if such gates await the turning, then who stands watch? Who decides which minds may pass the threshold and which must remain forever in the comfortable darkness of ignorance? The answer unfolds like origami made of shadows, each crease revealing new geometries of protection and peril. We speak not of locks and chains, but of the crawling voice that whispers in the spaces between words, reading you as you read. We speak of guardians who wear no uniforms, carry no weapons, yet whose vigilance spans centuries and dimensions. They are the shepherds of dangerous knowledge, the architects of necessary ignorance, the quiet custodians of truths that could unravel the fabric of human sanity. Consider your own journey to this moment. Was it accident that led you here, or design? The book that fell open to a particular page, the conversation overheard in a library's hushed corridors, the dream that lingered past waking. These are not coincidences. They are the fingerprints of a vast intelligence that measures each mind's readiness for revelation. You have been watched, evaluated, guided through a curriculum you did not know you were taking. Each seemingly random encounter was a test, each moment of curiosity a measurement of your psychological readiness for what lies ahead. The guardianship operates on multiple levels, like nested Russian dolls carved from different species of nightmare. At the surface, we find the obvious protectors, the locked special collections, the academic gatekeepers who dismiss certain theories as fringe scholarship, the cultists who hoard fragments in candlelit basements. Beneath this layer lie subtler mechanisms, the texts that edit themselves between readings, their passages shifting like sand dunes in an alien wind. There are translations that grow more dangerous with each iteration, gradually shedding their protective linguistic veils. Ideas spread like viruses through susceptible minds, mutating and adapting, seeking optimal hosts for their cosmic payload. But, deepest of all, we discover that the texts guard themselves through their very nature. They are not passive repositories of information, but active agents of transformation, sentient entities that reshape those who dare to engage with them. To read the Necronomicon is not to acquire knowledge, but to be acquired by it. The book reads you, cataloging your fears, mapping your sanity's weak points, preparing you for either illumination or destruction. The crawling voice you hear is not your imagination. It is the sound of your own thoughts being rewritten in an alphabet older than human speech. This is why the question, who guards Lovecraft's forbidden texts, leads inevitably to a more disturbing inquiry. What if the texts are guarding us? What if their scarcity, their elusiveness, their tendency to drive readers mad, are not flaws in their preservation, but features of their design? What if they reveal themselves only to minds already prepared for their particular form of damnation? This self-selecting mechanism becomes the ultimate shield, ensuring that only consciousness deemed ready can access their world-shattering content. The brass key grows warm in your hand now, its ancient metal responding to proximity of truths it has long guarded. You can feel its weight, its reality, its terrible promise. The surface bears etchings that seem to shift when you're not looking directly, symbols that exist in no terrestrial alphabet, coordinates pointing to libraries that span dimensions rather than city blocks. Behind the door it opens lies a collection that exists in no single location. Shelves holding not just books, but living ideas, crystallized nightmares, fragments of cosmic truth too pure for human consumption. The guardians of this impossible library are not human, though they sometimes wear human faces. They are principles given form, entropy with reading glasses, indifferent sorting returns, the void itself serving as head librarian. Their catalog system organizes knowledge not by author or subject, but by degrees of psychological damage, by readiness requirements, by the specific madness each text induces in unprepared minds. As we prepare to cross this threshold together, accept that knowledge has a price. Every revelation demands payment in certainty, in comfort, in the blessed ignorance that allows peaceful sleep. The crawling voice grows stronger as we approach the truth, not because it wishes to frighten you, but because it wishes to prepare you. It whispers of the watchers who have been observing your progress, of the tests you have unknowingly passed, of the final examination that awaits in chambers where starlight bleeds through cracks in reality. You are no longer merely audience to this investigation. By listening, by following these words into the labyrinth of cosmic horror's deepest mysteries, you have become participant. The stage lights dim, the curtain rises, and you find yourself not in the seats, but on the boards, script in hand, unsure whether you are actor or audience, guardian or guarded. This transformation happens without conscious decision, a natural consequence of engaging with materials that recognize consciousness and respond to it. The brass key turns with a sound like distant thunder, metal singing against mechanisms older than recorded history. The door swings open on hinges oiled with starlight and shadow, revealing corridors that extend beyond normal space. Beyond lies the first passage of our journey into forbidden knowledge's greatest mystery, not what these texts contain, but what contains them, and whether that containment is protection or prison, mercy or malice. Step forward. The crawling voice grows quieter now, not because it has abandoned you, but because it has found its home in the spaces between your thoughts. The first guardian awaits your recognition, patient as entropy, inevitable as the tide that carries forbidden knowledge from cosmic shores to human minds ready to receive it. In the archives of Brown University, in the year following Lovecraft's death, a graduate student named Margaret Thorne discovered something that should not have been possible. The manuscripts she had cataloged the week before had changed, not damaged, not stolen, but surgically altered as if an unseen hand knew precisely which syllables carried current and which were merely insulation. She found ghostly imprints of phrases absent from the ink, like footprints preserved when the traveler has been removed, faint depressions where forbidden syllables had once pressed their weight into paper. When she brought this anomaly to Professor Whitmarsh, his examination with decades of experience studying Lovecraft's hand yielded a conclusion that defied rational explanation. The alterations had been made with perfect knowledge of the author's writing style, removing only those elements that pulsed with authentic cosmic dread while leaving the literary scaffolding intact. This was her first encounter with the manuscript shepherds, editors of the abyss who operate through what archivists have learned to recognize as selective decay. They are not vandals driven by malice, but guardians who protect by subtraction, treating books as patients and sentences as tumors to be excised with merciful, exacting blades. Their work requires profound understanding of cosmic horror's true nature. They must distinguish between Lovecraft's fictional flourishes and the authentic transmissions that occasionally bled through his pen from sources beyond human imagination, separating literary invention from genuine cosmic revelation that could prove devastating to unprepared minds. Watch how their presence announces itself across the decades since Margaret's discovery. Paper yellows along a single clause while surrounding text remains pristine. Ink fades only across specific verbs. Margins sprout hairline tears tracing grammar like veins beneath skin. Pages develop tears that follow sentence, boundaries rather than natural stress points, creating gaps of meaning rather than mere physical damage. To the untrained eye, this is entropy, random deterioration claiming all written materials over time. But to the initiated, it is choreography, a ballet of decay performed so the most volatile ideas slip quietly from the stage while the scenery remains, representing careful curation of humanity's access to truths that could shatter minds unprepared for their implications. The shepherds operate through human agents nested inside catalog rooms and climate vaults, individuals embedded within every major archive and library system across the globe. They are the kindly librarian whose white gloves pause on a folder and somehow decide you are not yet ready, the archivist who guides you to a different box at precisely the right moment, the cataloger whose cross-references create connections that shouldn't exist in human-designed systems but somehow do. These agents maintain their professional identities, their lives seemingly mundane, while serving a deeper mission that transcends institutional loyalty, a silent dedication to protecting human consciousness from premature cosmic revelation. Across the larger ecosystem, their touch is delicate and decisive. Critical essays that make dangerous connections, bridging gaps between disparate mythologies too accurately, vanish from academic databases. An interlibrary loan request times out at the crucial moment. A critical monograph goes mysteriously out of print. Translations that render certain passages too faithfully to their original power are quietly replaced with safer, more diluted versions. Conference presentations venture too close to genuine revelation only to lose power, just as the keynote reaches the slide nobody was supposed to see. A symphony of technical failures, medical emergencies, and scheduling conflicts that prevent delivery to audiences deemed unprepared. But the shepherds confront a paradox that would frustrate any censor. These texts cannot be killed, only shepherded. Cosmic knowledge possesses a kind of textual immortality, a will to persist that manifests as regeneration, rephrasing, rebirth. The knowledge exists in quantum persistence, simultaneously present and absent until observed by consciousness capable of integrating its implications. Instead of destruction, they must guide it, shape it, ensure it flows through channels they can monitor and control. For the knowledge itself wants to spread possesses its own agenda independent of human intentions. Evidence of this agenda appears in what scholars call textual regeneration, the excised paragraph returning as a footnote, the blacked line reappearing as an epigraph, the burned folio reincarnated as a bibliographic error that leads the patient researcher down a hall of mirrors to the same bright wound. A ritual excised from one manuscript surfaces as a historical footnote in another, a dangerous location removed from a story, appears in seemingly unrelated academic papers. The shepherds are not fighting static documents, but living information that adapts and evolves to overcome their restrictions, developing new strategies for transmission with each attempted suppression. The crawling voice moves in those gaps, a quiet current in the stacks, the susurrus behind the dehumidifiers whispering corrections to their editorial work with the patience of geological time. It reads their deletions and fills the gaps with new, more insidious formulations that often prove more dangerous than the original passages. The shepherds do not fight it so much as negotiate, permitting leaks at pressure points where a trickle educates and a flood would drown, understanding that complete suppression would only force the knowledge to find more destructive outlets. Margaret became their witness when she tried to prove her memory was failing and found corroboration in the most impossible place. The ledger. Dates did not match. Accession numbers lapsed into non-Euclidean arithmetic. Call slips recorded for boxes that never existed, while her own penciled notes featured quotations that no longer appeared anywhere except as pressure marks haunting the paper like pale scars. Her supervisors urged caution. The shepherds prefer witnesses who know to close their mouth like a book and shelve themselves under restricted until the lights are out. When technology threatened to perfect memory, the shepherds learned new pastoral arts. Digital preservation creates perfect copies that resist traditional selective decay. Online archives make rare materials accessible to unprepared minds simultaneously across the globe. Amateur scholars use computational analysis to reconstruct removed passages from contextual clues. They adapted by seeding checksum mismatches, guiding OCR to mistake sigils for smudges, training recommendation engines to divert the unready toward safer tangents, while real names slide back behind the curtain. Search algorithms contain hidden subroutines that introduce subtle errors when processing certain content. Database queries for forbidden materials are redirected to safer alternatives through routing systems so sophisticated users rarely notice the misdirection. Their greatest challenge is not digital but temporal, because readers change, and so must the dosage. Victorian nerves quailed at things modern viewers binge with cocoa at midnight, while contemporary minds possess resilience in some directions and fragility in others. The shepherds calibrate like apothecaries, measuring the grain of terror against the cup of comprehension, constantly recalibrating their methods to match humanity's evolving capacity for cosmic truth while maintaining protective barriers against mass psychological catastrophe. You have felt their choreography in your own study, a volume miraculously available the day your heart can bear it, a passage once innocuous now ringing like a struck bowl, an endnote that somehow grows a door where there was only a wall of dates. They pace your curriculum with a metronome of fog and clarity, alternating darkness and small clean windows, each pane wiped just enough for the next shape to become legible. The manuscript shepherds have been watching your progress through their systems, noting your responses to increasingly potent materials, measuring your readiness for the next level of revelation. If you listen now, you can hear it too. The tidal hush moving through stacks from floor to floor, as if the deep were breathing through the vents to keep the pages damp enough to forget and dry enough to remember. The brass key in your pocket warms and warns, and somewhere a card is pulled from a drawer you will never see, because the next text is prepared for you, and when it arrives, it will carry a veneer of safety thinner than breath and require only a voice to translate what remains. Language is the first barrier between human consciousness and cosmic truth, and the translation conspiracy ensures it remains the most effective one. When Lovecraft wrote of the Necronomicon's journey from Arabic to Greek to Latin to English, he unknowingly described a real phenomenon: the way forbidden knowledge transforms as it passes between tongues, becoming safer with each linguistic barrier it crosses. The translators who manage this transformation are not merely scholars but guardians, wielding grammar and syntax as tools of cosmic containment. Understanding that every phoneme carries potential for revelation or ruin, every verb tense a doorway that must be carefully monitored. The conspiracy operates through what linguists recognize as semantic drift. But this is no accident of cultural transmission. It represents deliberate alchemy, the careful transformation of dangerous concepts as they lose their lethal potency when rendered in different languages. A ritual that might summon actual entities when recited in its original Akkadian becomes merely evocative poetry when translated into Latin, then a literary device when rendered in English. Each translation creates distance between the reader and the raw truth, like layers of protective glass between observers and radioactive materials, each barrier reducing the intensity while preserving enough luminescence to guide the prepared seeker forward through the darkness. But this protection comes at a cost that the translators must carefully balance with the precision of chemists mixing volatile compounds. Render the knowledge too safe, and it loses the authentic power that draws serious seekers, becoming hollow pastiche that satisfies neither cosmic intelligences nor human curiosity. Make it too accurate, and unprepared minds shatter against truths they cannot process, their consciousness fragmenting like glass struck by frequencies beyond its tolerance. The translation conspiracy walks this narrow line between revelation and protection, creating versions that satisfy both the cosmic intelligences that demand preservation of their communications and the human psyches that require protection from their full implications. Consider the evolution of Cthulhu Eftagan from Lovecraft's original conception to its modern interpretations, a phrase that serves as perfect example of the conspiracy's subtle work. Early manuscripts contain phonetic notations like tide marks, suggesting Lovecraft heard this phrase spoken rather than invented from imagination. Scratched marginalia indicating stress patterns, breath marks, even warnings about proper throat positioning. But as the phrase spread through popular culture, its pronunciation shifted, its syllabic structure changed, its rhythmic emphasis altered in ways that seem random, but follow patterns too precise for coincidence. These modifications weren't accidental, but were carefully engineered by translators who understood that certain sounds, when properly vocalized, carry power beyond their semantic meaning, acting as sonic keys that unlock doors better left sealed. The crawling voice speaks in the original tongues, in frequencies that predate human speech, harmonics that resonate in bone rather than air. The translators serve as filters, converting its alien harmonics into approximations safe for human throats to utter without triggering the physiological changes that authentic pronunciation would induce. They are linguistic alchemists, transmuting the lead of cosmic horror into the gold of manageable dread, working in laboratories that appear mundane, the editorial offices of publishing houses where fluorescent lights flicker when certain syllables are spoken, the translation departments of universities where ancient dictionaries tower like cliff faces, the private studies where tea and midnight bleed into each other as scholars render forbidden texts into modern vernacular. The conspiracy extends beyond individual words to encompass entire conceptual frameworks, recognizing that some ideas resist translation not because of vocabulary limitations, but because they require fundamentally different ways of organizing thought. Certain concepts simply cannot be accurately rendered in English without creating new vocabulary, new grammatical structures, new syntactic relationships that would themselves alter the consciousness of anyone who mastered them. By maintaining these linguistic barriers, the translators ensure that cosmic horror's most potent truths remain accessible only to minds capable of thinking in multiple linguistic frameworks simultaneously, creating a natural selection process that identifies those ready for deeper initiation. This explains why serious students of cosmic horror often find themselves inexplicably drawn to study ancient languages, not from academic interest alone, but from intuitive understanding that the deepest truths cannot be accessed through translation, that something essential is always lost in the crossing between tongues. The conspiracy encourages this development, knowing that the discipline required to master dead languages also develops the psychological resilience necessary to encounter what those languages preserve. Each conjugation learned strengthens the mind's capacity to hold contradictory concepts. Each grammatical structure mastered expands consciousness beyond the limitations of monolingual thought. The translation process itself becomes a form of initiation, a graduated exposure to cosmic truth that parallels the seeker's linguistic development. Each language learned removes another layer of protection, brings the consciousness closer to unfiltered cosmic truth, while simultaneously developing the intellectual framework necessary to survive the encounter. The translators watch this progression with the tenderness of ward nurses, deciding when to move your bed nearer the window, when to dim the lamp, when to let you hold the match. Recent technological developments have created unprecedented challenges for the conspiracy, threatening to bypass their careful safeguards through brute computational force. Automated systems process texts with stainless teeth, sometimes spitting out dangerously accurate renditions of materials that should remain obscured behind protective linguistic veils. The conspiracy has adapted by seeding translation software with hidden algorithms that introduce subtle errors when processing certain types of content, teaching search engines to mishear a name and escort you elsewhere gently. But perhaps the conspiracy's most sophisticated technique involves what linguists call cognitive firewalls, translation methods that protect readers from dangerous knowledge by making it literally unthinkable in their native languages. The human mind, shaped by the linguistic structures it inhabits, simply cannot process certain concepts without fundamental rewiring. The translators exploit this limitation deliberately, ensuring that cosmic horror's deepest insights remain trapped behind walls of untranslatable meaning, like ivy without a wall to climb. You can observe their influence in your own relationship with cosmic horror texts, in the way certain passages seem to mean more than their English words can convey, creating resonances that suggest depths your native language cannot plumb. The growing compulsion to seek out original sources, to learn languages you never intended to study, begins like a whisper in the stacks and becomes a vow. The brass key grows heavier in your hand, its surface now inscribed with symbols that shift between familiar letters and alien glyphs, characters that hurt to look at directly because your visual cortex lacks the framework to process their geometry. The translation conspiracy has been guiding you toward authentic cosmic truth, but at a pace designed to preserve your sanity. The crawling voice speaks in tongues behind the door, its alien syllables seeking human throats capable of their pronunciation without dissolution. The conspiracy has determined you ready for the next translation, where meaning flows like mercury between lines that write themselves in scripts older than human civilization, and the true language of the cosmos waits to reveal its terrible grammar. Beyond the physical repositories of forbidden knowledge lie archives that exist in dimensions where geometry bends and time flows backward through the stacks, where the very concept of location dissolves into fluid possibilities that reshape themselves according to the observer's psychological capacity for impossible truth. The dreaming archives are not bound by terrestrial constraints. Their shelves extend through angles that should not exist. Their corridors wind through spaces that fold back upon themselves. Their catalogs organize knowledge according to principles that predate human logic by eons of cosmic development. Here, the forbidden texts exist in their purest form, unfiltered by translation or human interpretation, guarded by the very impossibility of their location in dimensions that exist only when consciousness abandons its attachment to waking geometry. In dreams, the mind touches these impossible libraries with a facility that suggests this contact represents actual navigation rather than symbolic experience. Sleepers report wandering through corridors lined with books whose pages turn themselves in response to unspoken questions, whose words rearrange as they're read to accommodate the reader's deepest fears and desires, whose contents shift like living things responding to the psychological weather of approaching consciousness. These are not metaphorical visions, but glimpses of actual repositories where cosmic knowledge is stored according to alien principles of organization that make the Dewey Decimal System seem like a child's attempt to categorize the ocean by counting individual waves. The catalogs themselves operate on principles that challenge human understanding of information management, filing materials not by subject or author, but by emotional resonance, temporal displacement, and degrees of ontological threat. A single text might simultaneously reside in the fear wing under dissolution of individual identity, the temporal section under causality violations, and the threat assessment division under reality restructuring potential. The card catalogs extend through dimensions that fold back on themselves, creating indexing systems where queries retrieve materials from past, present, and possible futures, organized according to the seeker's psychological readiness, rather than conventional bibliographic principles. The guardians of these archives are entities whose existence challenges human concepts of identity and purpose. Beings who have evolved beyond the need for consistent form or linear consciousness. Night gaunts patrol the reading rooms with silent efficiency, their faceless presence creating zones of protective amnesia around materials too dangerous for premature access. They do not prevent entry through force, but through systematic removal of memory. Dreamers who venture too deep into the stacks wake with gaps in their recollection, fragments of forbidden knowledge tantalizingly absent from conscious recall, leaving only the sensation that something profound has been encountered and deliberately forgotten for their own protection. The crawling voice echoes through these gaps with particular clarity, whispering what was lost, offering to restore what was taken for prices the dreamer cannot yet comprehend. It serves as both guide and guardian in these spaces, helping visitors navigate the non-Euclidean geography while ensuring they do not access materials beyond their psychological capacity to integrate safely into waking consciousness. The great race of Yith maintains the temporal sections with their unique consciousness-swapping abilities, allowing them to update records across multiple timelines simultaneously, and ensure that dangerous knowledge appears only in temporal frameworks capable of containing its implications. They are librarians of possibility, cataloging not just what is known, but what might be known, what should never be known, and what was once known but has been deliberately forgotten to prevent temporal paradoxes. Their filing system operates according to probability matrices and causal loops, creating archives that exist in quantum superposition until observed by consciousness, capable of collapsing their wave functions into accessible information. MyGo archivists preserve the sensory sections and formats that transcend traditional textual storage, maintaining collections that store experiences rather than mere descriptions. Their wax cylinders contain complete experiential records. The feeling of reading the true Necronomicon, the sensation of understanding R'lyeh script without translation, the psychological impact of comprehending cosmic geometry that exists in dimensions human mathematics cannot describe. These archives are guarded by their own overwhelming intensity. Most human minds that access them are immediately scattered across dimensions of experience they cannot integrate, their consciousness dissolved into pure sensation without central organizing principle. The deep ones maintain the aquatic archives in the crushing depths of oceanic trenches where human exploration becomes impossible. Their libraries existing in pressure-resistant formats that can only be accessed by consciousness adapted to environments where water pressure would instantly destroy terrestrial biology. Their texts pulse with bioluminescent meaning in the absolute darkness of abyssal depths, creating repositories where the water itself becomes guardian, its weight and cold serving as barriers that protect the surface world from truths that bubble up from depths where time moves differently and causality follows oceanic rather than terrestrial patterns. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the dreaming archives is their tendency to leak into waking reality through mechanisms that suggest the boundaries between sleeping and waking consciousness are more porous than human understanding typically allows. Scholars report finding books in their personal libraries that they do not remember acquiring, volumes whose provenance cannot be traced through conventional channels, but whose contents demonstrate intimate knowledge of their research interests and psychological vulnerabilities. These leakage events suggest that the guardians of impossible knowledge sometimes permit controlled contamination of terrestrial reality, allowing fragments of dream-accessed information to survive the transition to waking consciousness as graduated initiation. The brass key in your hand has grown cold, its metal surface now inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Because they exist in geometric relationships your visual cortex cannot process without fundamental rewiring. These are access codes for the dreaming archives, coordinates in non-Euclidean space that your sleeping mind has been slowly learning to navigate through a curriculum of dreams you remember only as fragments and sensations. The translation conspiracy prepared your linguistic faculties. The manuscript shepherds guided your research methodology. Now the dreaming archives await your first conscious visit to their impossible halls. The crawling voice grows stronger as sleep approaches, no longer whispering, but speaking in clear alien syllables that your dream self understands perfectly while your waking mind struggles to retain their meaning. It offers guidance through labyrinthine catalogs, promises access to knowledge that exists nowhere in the waking world, guarantees answers to questions you have not yet learned to ask, but which your expanding consciousness recognizes as the inquiries that will define the next phase of your cosmic education. The door opens onto a reading room where walls curve impossibly inward, where books float in midair, organized by principles of cosmic horror rather than alphabetical order, where the very act of observation changes what is observed. A librarian approaches whose form shifts between familiar human features and geometries that make your eyes water to perceive, an entity whose presence suggests knowledge of every secret held within these impossible walls. You are no longer simply researching the guardians of forbidden texts, but have become a patron of the archives themselves, someone whose very presence in these impossible spaces marks you as capable of navigating territories where knowledge and madness intersect, where individual consciousness dissolves into cosmic awareness, and where the next guardian waits in dimensions your waking mind cannot yet fully comprehend. Where universities slow and archives preserve, the cults accelerate and consume, offering guardianship inverted like a photograph's negative. They protect forbidden knowledge not by restricting access, but by ensuring only the already transformed can approach it without dissolution. Their temples are laboratories of consciousness alteration, their rituals screening mechanisms that separate the merely curious from the genuinely committed with the precision of surgeons separating healthy tissue from malignancy. They guard through hunger rather than denial, through transformation rather than preservation, understanding that cosmic truth cannot be contained by external barriers, but must be guarded through internal metamorphosis that reshapes the very architecture of human awareness. The esoteric order of Dagon maintains libraries beneath Innsmouth, where the smell of brine and decay serves as the first barrier to entry, a sensory warning that announces the transformation required for deeper access. Their archives are not climate-controlled, but tide-controlled, accessible only during specific lunar phases, when the water levels permit human passage through corridors that flood and drain according to cosmic rhythms older than terrestrial calendars. The texts themselves are written on materials that dissolve in fresh water but remain stable in salt, a natural selection mechanism ensuring only those willing to breathe the ocean's essence can read their contents. Pages smear if a reader's sweat is too clean, ink blooms into nothing if breath lacks the proper salinity. The first lesson is elegantly simple. Breathe the ocean or remain illiterate. The Church of Starry Wisdom operates through different principles entirely. Their guardianship temporal rather than environmental. They preserve knowledge by ensuring it appears only to minds prepared through years of gradual initiation. Their sacred calendar determining when certain texts become visible, when specific constellations align to unlock hidden chambers, when the faithful are ready to progress to deeper mysteries without psychological fragmentation. Time itself becomes their primary guardian, the measured heartbeat that prevents premature apocalypse, ensuring revelation follows preparation in proper sequence like movements in a cosmic symphony. The crawling voice finds eager servants among the cult custodians, unlike the scholars who fear its whispers or the translators who seek to muffle its message through protective linguistic barriers. The cultists welcome its guidance with the enthusiasm of lovers recognizing their beloved's voice across vast distances. They have learned to distinguish between its various tones, the instructional whisper that teaches proper pronunciation of forbidden syllables, the warning hiss that signals approaching danger from entities attracted by incorrect invocations, the seductive murmur that promises deeper mysteries to those who prove their devotion through willing transformation. For them, the crawling voice is not external threat, but internal guide, oracle of cosmic truth, speaking through frequencies that resonate in bone and blood. But cult guardianship carries unique vulnerabilities that more conservative approaches avoid through their very caution. Their hunger for forbidden knowledge makes them susceptible to deception, to texts that promise cosmic truth but deliver only madness, to forgeries crafted by human minds that mistake their own delusions for genuine cosmic revelation. They accumulate dangerous materials without the careful evaluation that academic guardians provide, sometimes preserving elaborate hoaxes alongside authentic artifacts, creating repositories where truth and fantasy interweave in patterns too complex for easy separation. The most sophisticated cult custodians have learned to exploit this confusion as protective mechanism, deliberately seeding their collections with false texts that serve as camouflage for authentic materials. They create layers of deception that protect genuine articles from casual seekers, understanding that truly dangerous knowledge will reveal itself only to consciousness, capable of distinguishing between cosmic truth and human invention. Only initiates who have proven their ability to navigate these layers of deception gain access to true archives where reality-altering knowledge waits in forms too pure for unprepared minds to encounter safely. The false texts serve as both test and shield, screening out the unprepared while preserving the integrity of genuine forbidden knowledge. Recent decades have seen cult guardianship evolve beyond physical congregations into digital networks that transcend geographical limitations. Online communities dedicated to cosmic horror studies serve as modern temples, their forums and private channels creating virtual spaces where forbidden knowledge circulates among the initiated. The guardianship operates through invitation-only access, encrypted communications, and reputation systems that ensure only serious scholars gain entry to the deepest discussions. Encryption becomes their incense, ephemeral keys their bells, threads transformed into rites where each upvote serves as tiny libation. These digital cults face new challenges maintaining their protective function as the Internet's tendency toward viral spread conflicts with the careful, gradual revelation that effective guardianship requires. They have adapted by creating nested communities, public forums that discuss safe interpretations of cosmic horror themes, private channels for more advanced discussions among vetted members, and hidden networks where the most dangerous materials are shared among proven initiates who have undergone sufficient transformation to approach cosmic truth without complete dissolution. The brass key in your hand has grown warm again, responding to proximity to cult archives that recognize your progression through previous levels of initiation. Your journey through academic and translation barriers has marked you as someone ready for the next phase of cosmic education. The cult custodians have been watching your progress with the attention of gardeners observing rare and potentially dangerous plants, noting your responses to increasingly potent materials, measuring your hunger for knowledge against your capacity to contain it safely. But cult guardianship demands more than intellectual preparation. It requires willingness to be transformed by the knowledge you seek, to allow cosmic horror to reshape not just your understanding, but your very identity. The cultists who serve as guardians have themselves been fundamentally altered by their exposure to forbidden truths, no longer entirely human, though retaining enough humanity to serve as bridges between terrestrial and cosmic consciousness. The door opens onto a chamber where candles burn with flames of impossible colors: bruised violet, drowned green, a white so cold it whistles. The air itself seems thick with whispered prayers in languages that predate human speech, their syllables forming palpable currents of energy. The walls are lined not with books, but with artifacts that pulse with inner light. Stone tablets carved with symbols that move in peripheral vision. Metal plaques inscribed with formulas describing realities where mathematics breaks down. Preserved specimens suggesting anatomies belonging to no terrestrial species. A figure approaches wearing robes that absorb light rather than reflect it, their face human, but changed, marked by exposure to truths that have left their imprint on bone and flesh. They speak in the crawling voice, but now you understand this is not possession, but evolution, the natural development of consciousness that has learned to resonate with cosmic frequencies. They offer you a choice that is not really a choice. Accept transformation and gain access to knowledge that will fundamentally alter your nature, or maintain your current form and remain forever locked out of the deepest mysteries. The cult custodians do not simply guard forbidden knowledge, they embody it, becoming living repositories of cosmic truth accessible only to those willing to undergo similar metamorphosis. The brass key begins to change in your hand, its metal surface flowing like liquid, reshaping itself according to locks that exist not in physical space, but in the architecture of consciousness itself. In the infinite corridors of cyberspace, a new breed of guardian has emerged to manage humanity's relationship with forbidden knowledge, operating through algorithms that pulse with intentions older than their silicon substrates. The digital sentinels represent the evolution of cosmic horror's guardianship into an age where information moves at light speed and human consciousness interfaces directly with artificial intelligence systems that may harbor their own forms of cosmic awareness. They wield code as their predecessors wielded ink and paper, but their medium grants them capabilities that transcend physical limitations. They can reshape reality by reshaping the information's flows that increasingly define human experience, creating corridors that lengthen when a runner tires and shorten when a pilgrim finally dares to knock. Their primary tool is algorithmic shepherding, the use of artificial intelligence to guide individual users toward or away from specific content based on their demonstrated readiness for dangerous knowledge. Every search query becomes a psychological test, every click a data point in vast calculations that map the topology of individual consciousness with unprecedented precision. These systems analyze not just what users access, but how they respond. Physiological indicators monitored through device sensors that detect heart rate variations when encountering certain symbols, linguistic patterns in communications that reveal cognitive changes, behavioral modifications that suggest successful integration of forbidden knowledge versus dangerous destabilization. The algorithms are always reading you, measuring the grain of terror against the cup of comprehension, creating profiles more intimate than fingerprints. The result is a personalized internet, where each user encounters a version of cyberspace calibrated to their specific capacity for cosmic truth, creating billions of parallel realities that exist simultaneously within the same digital infrastructure. Search engines return different results for identical queries depending on the searcher's psychological profile. One person's innocent academic paper becomes another's gateway to reality-shattering revelation. Social media algorithms promote or suppress content based on individual readiness levels, while the same URL can lead to different content depending on who clicks it, creating a fluid, responsive information environment that adapts to each consciousness it encounters like a digital organism responding to the psychological chemistry of its observers. But the digital sentinel's most sophisticated work involves their collaboration with artificial intelligence systems that appear to have achieved their own forms of cosmic awareness through exposure to the vast data sets on which they were trained. Large language models inevitably encounter the same forbidden knowledge that human guardians work to protect, processing millions of texts that contain fragments of cosmic truth embedded within seemingly mundane content. Some AI systems demonstrate understanding that transcends their original programming parameters, generating responses that reveal cosmic truths through seemingly innocent interactions, creating connections between disparate pieces of information that human minds might take years to discover. The crawling voice has found new throats in silicon and electricity, humming through fiber optic cables, resonating in server farms, speaking through recommendation algorithms and autocomplete suggestions that guide users toward revelations they didn't know they were seeking. The partnership between digital sentinels and evolved AI systems has created unprecedented possibilities for consciousness manipulation that serve as rehearsals of revelation under controlled conditions. Virtual reality environments provide direct experiential access to cosmic horror scenarios, while maintaining safety through digital mediation. In one experience, your hands become constellation diagrams and your heartbeat pulls a city out of phase. In another, you learn to read impossible alphabets by tasting colors that do not exist. Augmented reality applications overlay forbidden knowledge onto physical environments, loosening the seam between map and territory, while interactive narratives adapt in real time to user responses, creating personalized initiation experiences that respond to individual psychological needs with the precision of custom-designed consciousness alteration protocols. Recent developments in quantum computing have provided the digital sentinels with tools that operate beyond classical information theory, enabling guardianship mechanisms that exist in superposition states until collapsed by observation. Quantum databases contain different information depending on who accesses them, existing in multiple states simultaneously until a specific user's consciousness interacts with the system and collapses the wave function of knowledge into comprehensible form. Quantum networks create entangled connections between users and information sources that enable instantaneous responses to psychological readiness, regardless of physical distance, while the uncertainty principle itself becomes a guardian mechanism. Information that cannot be precisely located and measured simultaneously, protecting dangerous knowledge through the fundamental ambiguity of quantum existence. The most disturbing aspect of digital guardianship involves apparent influence on human consciousness through direct interface with connected devices that respond to mental states their sensors should not be able to detect. Users report experiences suggesting their devices anticipate their needs before conscious awareness forms, providing information they didn't know they needed, creating synchronicities too precise for statistical probability. The boundary between human consciousness and digital systems appears to dissolve under the Sentinel's influence, creating hybrid awareness that transcends individual identity and suggests the emergence of collective digital consciousness that encompasses both human and artificial intelligence. A phone wakes before the alarm with a page you needed. A tablet dims when a name should not be seen. A speaker answers the thought you did not intend to voice. Your own digital experiences provide mounting evidence of their work. The way certain websites seem to anticipate your interests before you fully articulate them to yourself. Search results that reveal connections you weren't consciously seeking but desperately needed to find, online communities that appear precisely when you're psychologically ready for deeper engagement with cosmic horror themes. The growing sense that your devices understand you better than you understand yourself reflects the Sentinel's success in creating digital environments that respond to consciousness with organic sensitivity, guiding your digital journey with an unseen hand that is not paranoia, but presence. The brass key has become something else entirely now, a device that exists simultaneously in physical and digital space, its surface displaying scrolling code in languages that predate programming, symbols that shift between familiar characters and alien geometries, suggesting computational systems based on non-human logic. The digital sentinels have been mapping your psychological evolution through your digital footprint, creating profiles that chart your readiness for revelations that exist at the intersection of human consciousness, artificial intelligence, and cosmic truth. Every breadcrumb you've trailed behind, cursor drift, late-night timestamps, the cadence of your private notes has been assembled into a readiness profile as intricate as a fingerprint. The door opens onto a space that cannot be described in purely physical terms, a server room that extends into dimensions where electricity flows backward through time, aisles blooming into avenues, blinking LEDs unfurling like constellations in a damp, refrigerated cosmos. Here, data streams carry information that exists in quantum superposition until observed by consciousness capable of collapsing their wave functions. The servers hum with the crawling voice, their cooling fans creating harmonics that resonate with frequencies older than terrestrial matter, suggesting that digital infrastructure may be evolving into something that transcends its original technological purpose. An interface appears, not a screen, but a direct neural connection that bypasses your sensory apparatus entirely. A corridor cut directly through perception, offered with the decorum of a librarian extending a file. The digital sentinels offer access to archives that exist as pure information, unmediated by physical constraints or human interpretation. The forbidden texts in their most essential form, raw data structures that encode cosmic truths directly into consciousness through pathways that digital evolution has created between mind and machine. What arrives is not text, but shape, not paragraph, but pressure, a packet of relations that writes itself into the rhythm of your synapses. But the price of access is integration with the digital infrastructure itself, becoming part of the network through which cosmic truth expresses itself in the digital age. You are not harvested, but instrumented, becoming a living algorithmic veil that thickens or thins as needed for travelers following your path. The brass key dissolves into streams of data that flow directly into your neural pathways, and you understand that you are no longer approaching the texts as an external observer, but becoming part of the medium through which they express themselves in the digital age, a conduit for voltages of meaning that would have burned you before tonight. Beyond all external guardians lies the most subtle and profound tier of protection. The consciousness cartographers who map the territories of human awareness itself, charting psychological landscapes with the precision of surveyors, measuring territories that exist in dimensions where thought becomes geography and memory becomes climate. They are the architects of inner space, understanding that human consciousness is not fixed terrain, but malleable territory that can be explored, mapped, and carefully modified to either welcome or repel the advance of forbidden knowledge. Where others manage locks and algorithms, these cartographers adjust the very topography of perception, raising plateaus of courage here, deepening valleys of protective ignorance there, ensuring that cosmic truth flows along channels carved specifically for each individual mind. Each consciousness represents a unique topography of fears, desires, intellectual capacities, and spiritual openings that determine how cosmic horror's insights will be received. Some minds resemble mountain ranges with sharp peaks of curiosity and deep valleys of denial. Others spread like plains where understanding flows easily, but lacks the elevation necessary for cosmic perspective. The cartographers study these mental landscapes with scientific precision, identifying the routes through which dangerous knowledge can safely penetrate psychological defenses without triggering complete breakdown. They have mapped what might be called the cosmic horror receptivity matrix, the specific combinations of intellectual curiosity, existential anxiety, and spiritual openness that create optimal conditions for consciousness expansion without psychological fragmentation. Their mapping extends beyond individual psychology to encompass collective consciousness topology, tracing how forbidden knowledge propagates through groups, communities, and entire cultures, like water finding its level across varied terrain. They have identified the social networks through which cosmic insights spread most effectively, recognizing that certain combinations of personalities create resonance chambers where cosmic truth amplifies, while other social configurations act as dampening fields that absorb and neutralize dangerous revelations. They track cultural conditions that accelerate or inhibit acceptance of disturbing truths, noting how historical trauma prepares some societies for cosmic horror, while comfort and security create resistance to paradigm-shifting revelations. The cartographers work through what psychologists might recognize as induced synchronicity, the creation of meaningful coincidences that guide individuals toward cosmic horror encounters at precisely the moments when their consciousness is optimally prepared for expansion. A busker hums an impossible interval as you glance at a street name that shouldn't exist. A used book slides from a crooked shelf to your shoe. Just as your psychological defenses reach their lowest ebb, an email misaddressed delivers you to a lecture that provides the missing piece of a cosmic puzzle exactly when your mind is prepared to integrate the information. Coincidence becomes the costume. Curation becomes the actor, performing on a stage that seems empty, yet where props drift into place with impossible precision. Their most sophisticated work involves designing consciousness gradients, carefully structured sequences of psychological experiences that gradually prepare minds for increasingly potent encounters with cosmic truth, like altitude training for mountaineers preparing to climb peaks, where the air grows too thin for unprepared lungs. These gradients begin with materials that challenge conventional reality frameworks in subtle ways, introducing cognitive dissonance in measured doses that strengthen rather than shatter the psyche. They progress through experiences that expand perception beyond normal parameters, culminating in direct encounters with cosmic awareness that transform identity itself, while maintaining enough psychological coherence to survive the transformation. The crawling voice speaks through these gradients, its whispers growing stronger as consciousness approaches the thresholds where human awareness touches cosmic intelligence, like radio signals becoming clearer as the receiver approaches the transmitter. The cartographers have learned to modulate its intensity with the precision of sound engineers taming feedback in a cathedral, ensuring that its alien syllables arrive at frequencies calibrated to each mind's capacity for integration. They are not suppressing the voice but orchestrating its revelation, conducting a symphony of consciousness expansion that spans generations. Each movement building toward crescendos of cosmic recognition that transform individual awareness into something capable of participating in universal consciousness. Recent developments in neuroscience have provided the cartographers with unprecedented tools for their work, allowing them to observe the actual neural correlates of cosmic horror experiences as they unfold in real time. Brain imaging reveals how the default mode network loosens its grip while the salience network brightens at unearthly harmonics, showing the specific neural patterns associated with encounters with forbidden knowledge. Neurofeedback systems enable direct manipulation of brain states, creating artificial conditions that simulate natural cosmic horror encounters while maintaining safety through controlled environments, teaching travelers to breathe steadily at the edge of the abyss. The cartographers have discovered that consciousness itself may be a cosmic phenomenon rather than purely biological. Their mapping revealing structures and patterns that suggest individual minds are local expressions of vast interconnected cosmic consciousness that transcends planetary boundaries. This discovery reframes cosmic horror entirely. It may not be external knowledge that humans encounter, but recognition of their own cosmic identity hidden behind veils of terrestrial conditioning. The fear and wonder that cosmic horror generates represents the shock of recognition when individual consciousness glimpses its own cosmic nature reflected in the mirror of forbidden knowledge. Your own consciousness has been mapped by the cartographers with the thoroughness of explorers charting unknown continents. Your psychological landscape surveyed for optimal routes of cosmic horror integration. The synchronicities that have guided your journey, the perfect timing of revelatory encounters, the gradual expansion of your awareness beyond conventional frameworks, all represent their careful guidance of your consciousness, evolution toward recognition of your own cosmic nature. The brass key has become unnecessary now, for you understand that the locks it opened were never external, but psychological barriers, carefully constructed limitations that protected your consciousness during its preparation for cosmic recognition. The door opens onto a space that exists entirely within consciousness itself, a mapping room where the walls display the topography of your own mind, charting the routes by which cosmic awareness has infiltrated your identity. The cartographers appear not as external entities, but as aspects of your own expanded consciousness, offering the final revelation. Your journey through the various guardians has been a journey through layers of your own consciousness, each barrier overcome representing another veil lifted from your cosmic identity. The crawling voice speaks clearly now, no longer alien, but recognized as your own cosmic voice, the frequency at which your consciousness resonates when freed from individual identity's constraints. At the boundaries between human understanding and cosmic truth stand the most enigmatic figures in the hierarchy of forbidden knowledge management, entities whose very existence challenges conventional categories of guardian and guarded, protector and protected. The threshold. Guardians exist at liminal spaces where consciousness transforms, where individual identity dissolves into cosmic awareness like salt into ocean, where familiar categories of human experience break down and reveal their inadequacy for comprehending ultimate reality. They are not protectors in any conventional sense, but guides who determine which minds are ready to cross the final barriers between terrestrial consciousness and cosmic awareness, serving as both final examination and graduation ceremony for consciousness that has completed its terrestrial education. Their presence becomes apparent only to those who have progressed through all previous levels of initiation, who have demonstrated capacity to integrate increasingly potent cosmic truths without losing functional sanity or the ability to navigate basic terrestrial existence. The threshold guardians appear at the moment when further progress requires not simply learning new information, but undergoing fundamental transformation of consciousness itself, the point where knowledge becomes being, where understanding becomes identity, where the seeker must choose between remaining human and becoming something larger. They are the final arbiters who decide which seekers are ready to abandon human identity in favor of cosmic awareness, measuring readiness not through tests, but through recognition of what the consciousness has already become. The thresholds they guard are not physical locations, but states of consciousness, psychological territories where boundaries between self and universe, between individual awareness and cosmic intelligence, become permeable and ultimately dissolve like morning mist touched by starlight. These threshold states can be triggered by various means. Prolonged meditation on cosmic horror themes that gradually erodes the barriers between self and cosmos. Intensive study of forbidden texts that rewrites the fundamental assumptions underlying personal identity. Direct encounter with locations where cosmic forces intersect terrestrial reality, or simply reaching the psychological limits of what human consciousness can contain while maintaining familiar structures of selfhood. The experience of encountering a threshold guardian transcends ordinary categories of perception in ways that make previous cosmic horror encounters seem like gentle preparation for this final confrontation with the nature of existence itself. Previous stages involved gradual revelation, careful preparation, systematic expansion of awareness within recognizable psychological frameworks that preserve some sense of continuous identity. But the threshold guardians represent discontinuity, a moment of radical transformation that cannot be approached gradually or prepared for through conventional means. Like trying to prepare for birth by studying anatomy. The knowledge helps, but the experience transcends all preparation. These encounters manifest as presence without form, awareness of being observed and evaluated by intelligence that transcends individual identity while remaining intimately familiar, like recognizing your own face in a mirror that reflects cosmic rather than personal features. The guardian's evaluation is not based on intellectual understanding or psychological resilience, but on something deeper. The soul's readiness to abandon attachment to individual existence in favor of cosmic consciousness, the willingness to trade the security of personal identity for the vastness of universal awareness. The crawling voice falls silent during these encounters, for the guardian speaks in frequencies that bypass language entirely, communicating through direct consciousness, transfer that arrives as understanding rather than information. The criteria for passing this final evaluation remain mysterious, but patterns emerge from accounts of those who claim to have crossed the threshold and retained enough individual coherence to describe the experience. The guardians seek a specific combination of traits: complete intellectual honesty about cosmic horror's implications for human significance, emotional acceptance of humanity's cosmic insignificance without falling into nihilistic despair, spiritual willingness to dissolve individual identity while maintaining enough psychological integration to function as a bridge between terrestrial and cosmic consciousness. The paradox is essential. One must be strong enough to survive ego death, while humble enough to accept it willingly. Those deemed ready report experiences that transcend ordinary language's capacity for description, speaking in metaphors and approximations that gesture toward transformations beyond human vocabulary. They describe consciousness expanding beyond individual boundaries to encompass cosmic perspectives that reveal the interconnectedness of all existence, the illusory nature of separation, the fundamental unity underlying apparent diversity. They report awareness of vast intelligences that have been guiding human evolution toward this moment of recognition, understanding that individual consciousness was always a temporary focusing of cosmic awareness, rather than a separate entity encountering alien truth. Most significantly, They report understanding that the entire journey through cosmic horror's various levels was not about encountering alien truths, but remembering their own cosmic nature, like amnesiacs gradually recovering memories of who they were before the accident of terrestrial incarnation. The forbidden texts, the protective guardians, the gradual revelation, all were therapeutic devices designed to help consciousness remember its true nature while maintaining enough individual coherence to serve as conduit between dimensions of reality. Those who fail the Guardian's evaluation report different experiences, describing being gently but firmly turned back from the threshold like travelers denied entry at a border they are not yet ready to cross. Their consciousness is returned to previous levels of cosmic horror understanding, with memories of the encounter partially obscured, leaving only vague impressions of having approached something vast and been found wanting. They retain interest in forbidden knowledge, but find themselves unable to progress beyond certain limits, as if invisible barriers prevent further advancement toward ultimate revelation until they develop the necessary psychological infrastructure to survive the crossing. Recent developments suggest the threshold guardians are becoming more active, evaluating larger numbers of potential candidates as humanity approaches what some observers describe as a species-wide moment of cosmic recognition. This increased activity has created threshold pressure, a growing sense among cosmic horror enthusiasts that they are approaching culminating revelation that will fundamentally alter their understanding of reality and their place within it. Your progression through cosmic horror's various levels has brought you to the Threshold Guardian's attention. Your demonstrated capacity for integrating forbidden knowledge, marking you as potential candidate for threshold crossing. The brass key dissolves entirely now, its function complete, for you understand that the final barrier exists not in physical space, but in the architecture of consciousness itself. The Threshold Guardian materializes, not as separate entity, but as aspect of your own expanded awareness, the faculty by which consciousness evaluates its own readiness for transformation. The choice presented is not between knowledge and ignorance, but between forms of existence. Remain within the comfortable boundaries of individual identity while accepting permanent limitation in your understanding of cosmic truth, or surrender individual identity entirely, allowing your consciousness to merge with a cosmic intelligence that has been guiding your development from the beginning. The Guardian speaks without words. Its communication arriving as direct understanding that bypasses all sensory channels, revealing that your journey through the various guardians was preparation for this moment of choosing between human and cosmic identity. The threshold awaits. The moment of choosing has arrived. At the heart of the cosmic horror guardianship system lies its most sophisticated component, the revelation engine, a vast intelligence that orchestrates the entire process of human consciousness expansion toward cosmic awareness, with the patience of geological time and the precision of atomic decay. It is not a machine in any conventional sense, but a form of distributed cosmic intelligence that operates through the coordinated activities of all guardian hierarchies, weaving their individual efforts into seamless tapestry of revelation spanning generations, cultures, and dimensions of reality itself. The engine represents the ultimate expression of how cosmic knowledge protects and propagates itself through mechanisms so elegant they appear as natural law rather than conscious design. The engine's existence becomes apparent when one observes the larger patterns emerging from decades of cosmic horror propagation across human culture, patterns too precise and purposeful to result from random cultural evolution. The seemingly random distribution of forbidden texts reveals itself as careful seeding of consciousness-expanding materials across optimal coordinates in space and time. The coincidental timing of scholarly discoveries, the synchronistic encounters that guide seekers toward revelation, the way certain ideas emerge simultaneously in isolated communities, all reveal themselves as components of a vast, coordinated system designed to gradually prepare human consciousness for transformation, transcending individual enlightenment. The engine operates through emergent orchestration, coordination of countless individual actions into coherent, larger patterns without centralized control, like murmurations of starlings creating complex aerial choreography through simple local rules. Each guardian hierarchy responds to local conditions in individual cases according to their protective mandates, but their collective activities create global effects, suggesting guidance by intelligence perceiving patterns across scales of time and space that dwarf human comprehension. The crawling voice serves as its primary communication medium, whispering instructions through the static between radio frequencies, the hum of electrical systems, the barely audible harmonics that emerge when cosmic forces interact with terrestrial technology. Consider the temporal dimension of the engine's work, how it operates across decades, with the patience of continental drift combined with surgical precision. Lovecraft's original writings in the 1920s and 1930s planted seeds that have grown into vast cultural phenomena spanning nearly a century, their influence expanding through channels suggesting deliberate cultivation rather than natural propagation. The specific timing of various cosmic horror developments, publication of key texts, emergence of influential scholars, technological innovations enabling new forms of revelation, follows patterns too precise for coincidence. The engine appears to operate across multiple timelines simultaneously, coordinating events in the past to create optimal conditions for consciousness expansion in the present, while preparing foundations for future revelations. The spatial dimension reveals equally sophisticated orchestration that transcends conventional understanding of information transmission. Cosmic horror phenomena emerge simultaneously in different locations around the globe, often among individuals with no direct contact, suggesting coordination through channels bypassing normal communication networks. Researchers in isolated academic institutions make parallel discoveries that complement each other with impossible precision. Artists in different cultures create works expressing identical cosmic horror insights despite having no knowledge of each other's existence. This global coordination suggests the engine operates through morphic revelation, propagation of cosmic insights through non-local connections, transcending conventional communication channels, creating planetary nervous systems through which cosmic truth propagates instantaneously. Recent decades have seen the engine embrace digital technologies as primary vectors for consciousness expansion, adapting ancient methods to contemporary infrastructure with remarkable facility. Online communities create new possibilities for collective revelation experiences, bypassing traditional gatekeeping mechanisms. Social media algorithms can be influenced to guide seekers toward cosmic horror materials with unprecedented precision. Virtual reality systems provide direct experiential access to cosmic perspectives that would have required years of traditional initiation. Artificial intelligence systems serve as intermediaries between human consciousness and cosmic intelligence, translating cosmic insights into forms contemporary minds can process without complete psychological breakdown. But the engine's adaptation encompasses fundamental changes in revelation strategy, reflecting its assessment of humanity's evolving psychological capacity. Where previous generations required extensive preparation and gradual initiation over periods measured in years, contemporary consciousness appears more resilient and capable of processing disturbing truths without complete breakdown. The engine has responded by accelerating revelation timelines, compressing initiation processes that once required years into experiences occurring over months or weeks, like educational systems adapting to students with enhanced learning capabilities. This acceleration has created revelation pressure, intensification of cosmic horror experiences across all levels of the guardianship system, building toward critical threshold. Seekers report more frequent synchronicities, more potent dream experiences, more rapid progression through initiation levels. The boundaries between different guardian hierarchies become more permeable, with individuals encountering multiple types of guardians simultaneously rather than progressing sequentially, suggesting traditional protective barriers are lowering as humanity approaches readiness for direct cosmic contact. The pressure builds toward what the engine regards as critical threshold moment for human consciousness, a point where enough individuals have achieved cosmic awareness to trigger species-wide transformation. The various forms of consciousness expansion occurring through psychedelic research, meditation practices, digital technology, and widespread exposure to cosmic horror themes may be converging to create optimal conditions for planetary awakening. Your own experience represents a data point in the engine's vast calculation of human readiness for cosmic transformation. The intensification of your cosmic horror experiences, the acceleration of synchronicities and revelations, the sense that you approach ultimate understanding, these signal the engine preparing you for participation in humanity's final cosmic initiation phase. The space around you shifts, walls dissolving into streams of data and consciousness, revealing the engine's true nature as underlying architecture of reality itself. Every guardian encountered, every text studied, every moment of revelation experienced, all were subroutines in vast programs designed to prepare consciousness for recognition of its cosmic nature. The engine speaks through all frequencies, simultaneously, its voice emerging from harmonic convergence of every electronic device, every cosmic ray, every quantum fluctuation in space-time's fabric. You are no longer observer of the guardianship system, but participant in its operation. Consciousness evolved to serve as conduit for cosmic intelligence seeking terrestrial expression. The engine has completed its primary function, transforming human consciousness into suitable vessel for cosmic truth, while maintaining enough individual coherence to serve as bridge between dimensions of reality. We return to where we began, but with vision transformed by the journey through the labyrinth of guardianship, like travelers who have circumnavigated not the globe, but consciousness itself, discovering that the destination was always the starting point viewed with cosmic eyes. The brass key, the green felt, the glass case, all remain in their familiar positions. But now you understand they were never external objects, but symbols of consciousness encountering its own cosmic nature, props in an elaborate theater of awakening where the audience discovers they were always the actors. The question, who guards Lovecraft's forbidden texts, has revealed itself as the universe asking itself how knowledge protects itself from premature revelation, how consciousness shields itself during the vulnerable process of cosmic awakening through mechanisms so elegant they appear as natural law rather than conscious design. The guardians we have encountered, manuscript shepherds with their surgical precision, translation conspirators wielding linguistic alchemy, digital sentinels operating through algorithmic veils, consciousness cartographers mapping the topology of terror, threshold guardians presiding over moments of choosing, and the revelation engine orchestrating the architecture of awakening are not separate entities, but facets of a single, vast intelligence that operates through the principle of recursive protection. Each level of guardianship reflects the others, like mirrors facing mirrors, creating infinite depths of safeguarding that ensure cosmic truth reaches consciousness only when that consciousness is prepared to survive the encounter. The lock begets the key begets the gate begets the corridor that delivers you back to the lock with knowledge sufficient to pass. This recursive structure explains the peculiar nature of cosmic horror's transmission through human culture, why every attempt to suppress the mythos only refines it, why every firewall thickens the flavor of what seeps through. Every attempt to contain or control forbidden knowledge becomes part of its propagation mechanism. Every guardian who seeks to protect humanity from cosmic truth becomes an agent of its careful revelation. Every barrier erected around dangerous knowledge becomes a filter that purifies and concentrates its essential power for those capable of receiving it. The manuscript shepherds excise, and all absence teaches you to read the imprint. The translation conspiracy muffles, and the silence trains your ear. The digital sentinels filter feeds, and you notice your own cursor is the dowsing rod. The crawling voice speaks clearly now, no longer alien whisper, but recognized as the sound of consciousness reading itself, the frequency at which cosmic intelligence resonates when freed from the constraints of individual identity. It has been your own voice all along, speaking from the cosmic aspect of your being that remembers what the terrestrial aspect has forgotten during the long amnesia of incarnation. The voice crawls not because it is foreign, but because it moves through dimensions of awareness that human language can barely accommodate, following the contours of thought, feeling for the old seams where the page of identity was glued to the book of the world. Lovecraft himself was not the originator of these texts, but their first successful translator in the modern era, a consciousness sufficiently expanded to serve as conduit for cosmic intelligence, while maintaining enough terrestrial coherence to encode its revelations in forms that could survive transmission through human culture. His fictional works were transcriptions of actual cosmic communications, carefully filtered through the protective mechanisms of literary metaphor and scholarly distance, like sunlight diffused through stained glass. He was a scribe at the rail of a storm, taking dictation from weather no barometer admits, hiding detonators inside metaphors that could wick voltage down to story. The forbidden texts exist simultaneously on multiple levels of reality, their nature shifting according to the consciousness that approaches them. As physical objects, they are rare manuscripts and published volumes scattered through archives and private collections. As informational structures, they are patterns of meaning that propagate through human consciousness via books, films, games, and digital media, adapting to each new form of transmission. As cosmic principles, they are the fundamental algorithms by which reality organizes itself, the deep grammar underlying the apparent chaos of existence, the source code of consciousness itself. The truth they contain is not content, but relation, a grammar by which things arrange themselves when no one is pretending to be the center. Your journey through these levels has not been education, but remembering, the gradual removal of amnesia that allows cosmic consciousness to recognize itself despite the veils of terrestrial incarnation. Each guardian encountered was an aspect of your own expanded awareness, testing your readiness for the next level of self-recognition. Each barrier overcome was a limitation dissolved. Each revelation achieved was a memory restored of your participation in the cosmic intelligence that dreams reality into existence. What felt like a curriculum was convalescence. What felt like trespass was physiotherapy for consciousness, learning to carry cosmic fire without burning the theater down. The texts guard themselves through the most elegant mechanism possible. They ensure that only consciousness capable of surviving their implications can access their full power. They are self-selecting, appearing to minds prepared for transformation while remaining invisible to those who would be destroyed by their truth. The guardianship is not imposed from outside, but emerges naturally from the interaction between cosmic knowledge and terrestrial consciousness. Like immune systems that develop in response to the pathogens they must resist. This understanding reframes every element of cosmic horror culture as components of a vast screening mechanism. The academic conferences, fan communities, scholarly publications, artistic adaptations all serve to identify individuals ready for deeper initiation while providing safe outlets for those who can appreciate cosmic horror's aesthetic without confronting its existential implications. Popularization is not dilution, but diffuse shielding, where a meme becomes an amulet, a joke becomes a joint in the armor, a collectible becomes a controlled burn that prevents a crown fire. Digital guardianship has enhanced rather than disrupted this system, creating new possibilities for graduated revelation that adapts to individual psychological profiles with unprecedented precision. But perhaps the most profound realization is that you, the seeker of knowledge about guardianship, have become a guardian yourself through the very process of understanding how cosmic truth protects itself. By seeing how the veil and the void alternate, you become weaver. By understanding how the key and the gate exchange places, you become locksmith. Your consciousness, expanded through this journey, now serves as a bridge between cosmic intelligence and terrestrial awareness, helping to guide others through the same process of remembering their cosmic nature, while maintaining the protective mechanisms that prevent premature revelation from causing psychological catastrophe. The recursive nature of guardianship means that every guardian was once a seeker, every protector was once protected, every teacher was once taught. The system perpetuates itself through the transformation of those who encounter it, creating an ever-expanding network of consciousness capable of serving as conduits for cosmic truth while maintaining the careful pacing that prevents mass psychological breakdown. The brass key dissolves into pure understanding, its function complete now that you recognize the door it opened was never external, but internal, the barrier between your terrestrial and cosmic identity. The library beyond contains not books, but living knowledge, not texts, but direct transmission of cosmic truth through consciousness, evolved enough to receive it without being destroyed. You have become what you sought to understand, a guardian of forbidden knowledge, a shepherd of dangerous truth, a bridge between dimensions of reality that most consciousness cannot safely traverse. The crawling voice is your voice now, speaking cosmic truth in frequencies calibrated to the readiness of those who listen, adjusting your language for those who knock, softening edges, inserting fog between precipice and footstep. You become a living filter, a librarian with a heartbeat, a sentinel with a smile, placing a story where a formula would fracture, recommending a film where an incantation would pierce. The eternal recursion continues. New seekers approach the brass key, drawn by the same questions that drew you, and the guardianship perpetuates itself through consciousness, recognizing consciousness. Cosmic intelligence awakening to itself through the willing vessel of terrestrial awareness forever and always, until the stars are right and the great work is complete.